Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. In this video, we're chatting with Mike Lloret. Mike is a biologist at Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant in Miami, Florida. Why does a power plant need a biologist? Well, stay right here to find out how Florida Power and Light is playing a crucial role in the conservation of the American crocodile. Well, today we're chatting with Mike Lloret. Mike, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You currently are employed at Turkey Point as a crocodile biologist.
Yes, sir. That's right. I monitor the 11,000 acres for wildlife, but the main reason I'm here is to monitor the crocodile population.
So we have another video with Joe Wazalewski, who was part of the beginning of that. So we have a lot of information in another podcast for the history of it, but I really want to know what's going on now. So how long have you been there?
So I am going on 9 years here at Turkey Point. It's a dream come true, right? Most people with our set of interests dream of working with crocodiles professionally. So I'm very lucky, very blessed to do what I do, and appreciative, of course. So
that means you've had an interest in reptiles for a long time.
Absolutely, my entire life. I got the bug, the disease. I jokingly say that we all have, where we're just obsessed with whatever it is, wildlife, reptiles, and can't get them off our mind.
Yeah, I mean, why I'm still doing this at 57 years old. I'm new to the YouTube era for my age. But yeah, same thing here. For me, it actually started with sharks. I was a kid when Jaws first came out. I couldn't get a pet shark for my fish tank, so Dad got me an iguana, and then the rest, then it went on to crocodilians, venomous snakes, and here we are. So, were you born and raised in Florida?
Born and raised in Miami, Florida. Again, I'll pull the lucky card again. Somebody with my interest, it's definitely the right place to be. There's tons to stimulate your mind, and whether you're chasing iguanas or watching alligators or whatever it might be, there's always some fun activity chasing around wildlife in South Florida.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'll say I'm a little jealous there, and I hope after retirement this year that I get down there to do a lot more. I have visited not Miami directly, although I drove through Miami and was really surprised when I saw a rooster crossing the road in the middle of the city. But then we made it into the Keys, and I had the fun of, I'll say, chasing, not aggressively, just getting close to and letting the iguanas get away. But yeah, they were all over in the Keys.
They are thick down here, without question. They're all over the place.
All right, well, we'll get to some invasives a little bit later. But as far as crocodiles, what was the background that led you to this job?
So like I stated earlier, I've always been obsessed with reptiles. Obviously, crocodilians kind of being the ultimate reptile. If I could rewind back to college or high school, middle school, just earlier life, I would have never been able to tell you that I was going to be monitoring a crocodile population at a nuclear power plant, of course, but I could have told you with 100% certainty that I would be working with wildlife professionally. And so that's what I was always sure of. I didn't know how, but I knew that I was just going to keep working towards that till opportunities, came my way. So actually, a great professor of mine, Gina Moranto at the University of Miami, when I was there, she reached out to me because there was a job opening to basically be a contractor affiliated with the crocodile program. And so I applied for that, got the job, and the rest is history.
And then your background through college was mostly a wildlife biology, ecology type background?
I just got my undergrad in biology. I wanted to keep it basic, just so that I knew. I wanted something general so that I had options to go in many different ways. Um, so that was my decision to keep it general, and then I got a minor in ecosystem science and policy, which is a little bit more focused on, my interests.
Perfect. Yeah, I get that question a lot. What is the best avenue as far as college degree, coursework to get a particular job in the animal field? Because I work with animals in my own collection, but I'm also a school teacher. But not going forward with the full blown profession outside of my small business, I don't always have that answer for the kids. Like I'm not sure what they're looking for, especially since I graduated my bachelor's in 1991. So that was a little long time ago. But so good. So you're tell us a little bit about what you are seeing in the last 9 years in terms of crocodile recovery and the role of a power plant helping them.
So you have this incredible story of industry, that is, power generation, with Florida Power and Light, and wildlife, right? And Florida Power and Light prides itself with being environmental stewards, protecting the environment, taking care of the environment, and this is just the ultimate example of that. So if we kind of rewind, in the '60s when the cooling canals were dug out, crocodiles were never a thought. And when we talk about the '60s, you're talking about a population that was around 150 to 300 animals in all of the United States, all of South Florida, whichever way you want to say it. So not many people knew about crocodiles, knew they were around, and they were a complete afterthought. Fast forward to the completion of the cooling canals, right, and basically ideal location in between two national parks, right on the southeastern coast of the state. It was a natural magnet for crocodiles, and so we've been able to monitor the species for close to 50 years now. So you can imagine all of the information we've been able to put together. So many amazing biologists have been a part of the program, and just the sheer thought of having all of this data for so long is really telling. We're able to learn so much and put together just great habitat for what we know the crocs prefer and need to thrive. And we've proven that time and time again. We broke the record for crocodile hatchlings this year again with 611 hatchlings, which is really exciting. I'm a very competitive person, so every year we try to one up the year before, but it doesn't always work out that way, right? So there we continue to make habitat, we continue to rehabilitate habitat, create new habitat, and monitor these crocodiles.
That's awesome. Am I correct that one of the biggest problems was also loss of nesting sites, and that's one of the things that the berms created in the cooling canals?
Yes. So we are essentially, well, we're 100% man-made, right? So everything is initially artificial, right? This was made by man for another purpose. The combination of, like I said, location and accidental ideal habitat, we've been able to build on that to basically put together the perfect formula for these crocs and give them what they need. Not only that, but funnel them to the places we know are safer for them, right? Keep them further away from, projects and things like that, roads, right? Because we know they're here. There's no secret about that. But there's no sense in inviting them into the middle of, human inhabited areas if we don't need to.
No, that totally makes sense. Now, obviously, you said you're collecting data so that you can review it. There's 50 years in the books before you were there as well. What is a typical day in the day of Mike Lloret at Turkey Point as far as what you're surveying, what type of data you're collecting?
So, as many of us know, a lot of the croc work is seasonal, right? They're nesting, once a year or once every couple of years. It really just depends what time of year we're in, right? So, I have different kinds of surveys that I'll do on a regular basis. For instance, we're now in November, so I'm formulating our annual report that will put together all of the data that we collected for the year, including all the hatchling data. So that's a monumental task at the end of the year, every year, to try to put everything together, make sense of everything, so that we can, send it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So it all depends. I'm on call 24/7. So I could get a call at 3 in the morning that there's a rattlesnake in the plant, and I'll have to go in there and safely relocate it, or a crocodile, or anything really, raccoon, any kind of critter, that we obviously want to keep safe, and we don't want to have any issues, human animal conflict. So I get that question a lot. I don't have a specific answer, but that's what I signed up for. I enjoy not necessarily knowing what's coming the next hour, the next minute, the next second. That's exciting for me and always keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, I was going to say that must keep things exciting. You don't have that typical stagnation that can build up in many, many jobs that are just repetitive every day. So I'm going to assume hatching season is probably your busiest time when you're surveying how many young hatchings are making it.
That's right. So typically for us, it starts late June, and we usually cut it off mid-August. That's definitely the busiest time of year for us. We're here early in the morning out on the airboats looking for nests, and I should say looking for hatch nests, because we're monitoring the nest during the incubation as much as we can, right? But keep in mind, it's 168 linear miles of cooling canals and surrounding areas. So it's very much like finding a needle in a haystack. We have to cover a lot of ground in a little bit of time. But basically, in hatching season, we're here in the morning looking for hatch nests. Then 2 to 3 times a week at night, we'll assemble our croc team, go out, with basically a plan of certain areas to go to. Typically, it's 2 boats, 2 different crews, and then we'll go out and catch as many crocs as we can.
Nice. Now you're catching the babies and monitoring. What type of information do you gather for the data other than just a number?
So we'll count how many hatched eggs are in the nest. We will obviously put the location, the GPS coordinates. All the crocs that we catch, our permit allows us to keep them for up to 5 days. So we have an indoor facility where we're able to keep those crocs comfortable, in holding tanks until we process them. So most of the data collection comes during the day when we're actually processing them in our lab. So we'll take all these different types of measurements, morphometric data, we'll weigh them, we'll sex them, we'll clip unique screw clip numbers into their tails as a form of identification, and then put in a pit tag as well, just like you would your dog or your cat. And then we release them back to the wild.
Do you release them as close to where they came from, or do you have a specific release spot?
So it really depends, kind of hinting at what we were speaking about before. The example I can give is if a mother crocodile nests near a road or an active work site, we're obviously not going to put those hatchlings back there, because we want to limit the risk of injury to people and injury to crocodiles, right? So those are 2 concerns that we have, that we've done a great job at limiting, and it's really because of the ability we've had to create habitat and funnel them where we would like them to go, where we know is ideal for them. And they've showed us that we know what we're doing by using the habitat, right? So we have tons of release ponds that were actually built, most of them in the southern part, so south of the cooling canal system. Joe was a big part of that project, where FPL created all these man-made ponds as release sites. So another issue that we have is, as we're going out in that 2-month period, you don't want to be releasing them in the same areas that you're actively catching more, because you're going to be wasting your time catching the same crocs that you've already tagged, right? So that's another reason that we might move hatchlings to another area. So earlier on in the season, we may move them to areas where we know there's no nests, so that we can continue to keep going after these fresh hatchlings that haven't been processed yet. Then later in the season, when we're kind of wrapping up, we'll put a big effort to release a bunch more of them within the system.
So then I guess the next question I have, and maybe a couple people watching might We know crocodilians are pretty good with parental care. Do you see a big difference then removing baby crocs from their mother after hatching and then putting them somewhere else where they may not be with her again?
So what we know about hatchling American crocodiles is they're wired, evolutionarily wired to survive. Depending on when we catch them, they're already hunting. Some of them, if they've already absorbed their yolk, they're already hunting on their own with no top behaviors from any other crocodilians. They already know what to do. As far as parental care, it's limited from what we see out here. Even if we were not to interfere, we see the crocs, the hatchling crocs, kind of going out on their own regularly, very early. For instance, if you can imagine uh, the mother taking the hatchlings into one of our man-made ponds, you would naturally see those hatchlings already dispersing within the first few weeks of life. They'd be going in and out of the ponds. They'd be leaving. Some would be coming back. Some wouldn't be coming back. So there's a lot of variability in what we see there. But we wouldn't do what we were doing if we weren't sure that the hatchling crocs knew what they were doing in regards to hunting and surviving.
Right. Now, well, we knew their instinct was there as a hunter and a survivor. I was thinking more of predation without mother's watchful eye. But I typically always thought that crocodiles didn't stay with their babies as long as alligators might anyway. So that pretty much makes sense. Did you freeze up? No, I thought you froze up.
Yeah, you froze up. We're
That's
back
all right.
now.
You're back now. So is that what I said made sense? Did you hear me about crocodiles not being as watchful for as long as alligators possibly?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree with that definitely. My experience with alligators is they're much better mothers than American crocs. Uh, Much more defensive. However, uh, I always say this too. Each crocodile is an individual. We have certain females that are extremely defensive. That we know exactly where they nest and we know to tread lightly. We have other females. I would say regularly when we go out to catch hatchlings, you'll see the mothers there and they'll kind of bow out of the way. They kind of know the drill. Um, so just depending on which way you look at it, we have this population of crocs that has, for the most part, been caught before. They know the drill. We know crocodilians are extremely intelligent. They'd rather stay out of the way than get in the way because they kind of know the drill. So you have this natural boundary that we've created by putting our hands on these animals continually.
Yeah. So pretty much learned behaviors. They learn to avoid something that they don't want to deal with. And again, yeah, the intelligence of crocodilians so much greater than what we ever thought in the past, at least when I was a kid. Um, so you're using more technology though now in the modern age. You use a lot of trail cameras, motion sensing cameras. What kind
Yes.
of data are you looking for with the cameras?
So the cameras are my eyes that aren't physically out there. It's a tremendous tool. We use cellular cameras, so when I'm at home, the little bit of time that I'm at home in hatching season, if my camera's set up properly, I'll actually get notifications that the mother's at the nest and retrieving her hatchlings. So I can schedule us going to get those hatchlings right away. The quicker we get to nests, the more hatchlings we'll be able to collect. Number one, because the younger they are, the easier they are to catch, and the less they've been predated upon. So we try to get them as soon as we can, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of predation, then I'm assuming you are going to also capture any nest predation on the cameras. Do you see a lot of that happening?
So, given our circumstances, we don't see much of it. It happens occasionally. Within the cooling canals, if I don't know if you're going to put some images of the cooling canals, but it would be helpful for anybody watching to understand what they look like. It's a series of berms that are surrounded by water. So although we have raccoons pretty much all throughout the site, we don't see raccoons regularly on the interior berms. Um, so we that's one of the advantages for crocs at Turkey Point is there is not a lot of natural nest predation within the cooling canal systems. Now, within the surrounding areas, every once in a while we'll have a nest that gets predated. For instance, this year we had one in our mitigation bank, which is the area that I was explaining earlier that we have built all these release ponds. Um, so the first nest that was documented for 2025, and when I say they, were assuming that it was raccoons and coyotes. Fairly certain. I just didn't have a camera on this particular nest. But I had a camera nearby and had pictures of coyotes and raccoons. And they ate the entire nest. They didn't leave a single egg behind. So, and it was dug extremely deep, which makes me think coyote. And then I'm sure once the nest cavity was open, all the raccoons came in and feasted as well.
Do you have any problem with invasives utilizing Turkey Point? We mentioned the iguanas earlier, but what about tegus, pythons, and everything that, as a New Yorker and what we hear online, you'll make it sound like they've taken over Florida.
Yeah, it's a problem, but it's not a new problem. It's an issue that gets politicized, and I don't want to take away from that. It is an issue. It's just as far as how the media handles it. You hear the same story over and over again as if it's new. This isn't new. This is something that we've been dealing with for many years. Right now, we actually have a series of 80 traps around the perimeter of our system to catch tegus. So we're regularly catching tegus. We necropsy tegus. We're looking at what they're eating, and then as far as pythons, we catch pythons. Anybody that works here on site gets an environmental briefing. So even though they may not be a biologist, they're at least briefed on what to look for. And if they were to come across one, they'd report it to me. So we have the advantage of all these eyes and ears all throughout the site at all times, which is really advantageous for somebody like me that's wanting to see what's going on at all times, but can't be everywhere at the same time.
Is it frequent that you're finding these reptiles, the berms and the tegus?
The tegus, the numbers are astonishing. They've been through the roof just year after year. We've been catching more and more and more tegus. And then the pythons, we certainly have them here, and we remove them, but they're not in big numbers, I would say. Now, iguanas are absolutely everywhere. The habitat is ideal for them. They have tons to eat. They actually enjoy the same nesting areas that the crocs use. So the same areas that we prep for crocs, the iguanas become a problem in those nesting areas because they're nesting the same time of year. If you can imagine digging up a nest, if you were to hit a cavity, right, a nest cavity, you would say, "Oh, I hit the jackpot. I found the nest." Well, with iguanas around, they make the entire area like Swiss cheese with their burrows, whether it's nesting burrows or whether it's just burrowing for refuge. It's just like an iguana highway. So you end up hitting a ton of other cavities and tunnels before you actually find the croc nest.
Wow. Yeah, so yeah, you would think that the tegus, which are more likely to eat eggs, are going to be the worst problem, but here the vegetarian is the one that's just creating havoc in terms of the nesting areas.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not a new problem. Lucky for the uh, crocs is that in most of their range, they overlap with green iguanas as well. So it's not anything too foreign to them. Obviously, we know that tegus eat eggs and like to eat eggs. We have not caught them on camera eating crocodile eggs yet, but they have been caught on camera eating alligator eggs. So we're trying to prevent that as much as possible, hence the trap line.
Makes sense. All right. Now, you said you've always had an interest in reptiles from when you were a kid. And I'm assuming then, like many of us, you've also have kept reptiles. Are you still keeping reptiles outside of your work at Turkey Point?
Definitely, reptiles have always been a huge part of my life, and continue to be, and will likely be the rest of my days. So yes, I keep a lot of animals. It's a topic that is controversial to some, but you learn so much by keeping animals responsibly in captivity. And with the work that we're doing at Turkey Point, essentially, if I owned the land and I wanted to produce as many crocodiles as I wanted, I would be doing exactly what we're doing. And so all of this knowledge from keeping and breeding and hatching and incubating all these species in captivity is really valuable for being able to do a great job with the wild population.
Yeah, I know when you say it's controversial, there's a lot of people that either don't want animals kept in captivity, whether it's a goldfish or not, all the way up to, what size cage, what type of bedding, what type of humidity and light cycle. There's so much that goes into keeping a reptile to try to mimic the wild population or the wild habitat that it's tough to get involved in discussions online without somebody finding something wrong with what you're doing. So what kind of reptiles are you keeping?
Uh, there's a long list. I've got turtles, tortoises, iguanas, snakes, crocodilians, a little bit of everything.
You keep crocs at home too?
Yeah, just for educational stuff for the most part.
What do you keep?
I have an American croc, I have a gator, and I have a spectacled caiman, just to tell the
Oh,
Florida story. One of my biggest pet peeves is, giving a presentation to a group of people that don't know what a croc is and using an alligator as an example. I really try not to do that. I think it's really important to show them a real croc, which is easier said than done because you have different regulations for crocs versus gators. But of course, I'm fully licensed and lucky enough where I'm able to do that. But yeah, speaking to the public that is often confused enough already on if crocs even exist in Florida, it doesn't help showing them an alligator when you're speaking about crocs. So I make sure to have the real deal of the American croc, the American alligator, and then the introduced crocodilian that we have in South Florida, the spectacled caiman.
yeah, because at least they might have the possible chance of seeing a caiman if they're in the Everglades in that area. I actually have a colleague I worked with, and one year when I was headed down to the Everglades, she decided to show me a picture from one of her airboat tours when they were down there. She's an earth science teacher, not a biology teacher, but she's showing me the picture, and I look at it, I'm like, do you know what you're looking at here? She goes, an alligator? I'm like, no, look at the color. Look at this. Look at that. I said, you actually saw a wild caiman in the Everglades. I said, didn't your tour guide tell you? She goes, oh, he might have. I don't know if I was listening. So, and yeah, it's amazing the number of people that either think the crocodiles are now invasive because we hear so much about other invasive reptiles. And like you said, back when there were less than 200 and now their numbers are growing. What's it up to 2,000 right now or so for adults? That people are like, oh, they're invasive. They're starting to spread. And no, this is natural. This is where they belong. But
Right.
yeah, I don't have an American croc. I have more or less crocs in my collection. So yeah, I totally agree with, if you're showing a gator, it's a gator. If you're showing a croc, it's a croc. Where I confuse a lot of people is I've started a little division for conservation with my artwork and other things. And I call it the Crocodilian Conservation Project. So when I have a sign at one of my displays, but I have an alligator, people get totally confused because they don't understand the grouping of a crocodilian and that an alligator is also a crocodilian.
Yes.
So I tell them, all crocodiles are crocodilians, but not all crocodilians are crocodiles.
Right. Yeah.
So
I try to make it as easy as I can on the public. You want it to stick, and you want your message to be heard. So over the years, I've definitely tried to put together a few tricks to kind of help push that information across to them.
Well, I do want to thank you so much for taking time. It's a Friday night. We did this kind of short notice because we've been trying to get together for a little while. I know my wife's got dinner plans, so we're getting close. But yeah, thank you so much. I know that I've seen other people talk to other people that have helped you out in the past. I meant it when I said it earlier, not to be too pushy, but I would love to if I'm in the area to stop by. And if you ever need a volunteer on an airboat during a hatchling survey, I'd be glad to be part of that.
We'll get you out there.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. It was great talking to you.
All right. Likewise. Take care.
Take care. Have a good night.
You too.